I've always believed that a home is more than just four walls and a roof. It's a living thing. It's a vessel that holds the echoes of every conversation you've ever had, every meal you've ever cooked, and every tear you've ever shed. I've lived in this apartment for 12 years, 3 months, and 4 days. To some, that might just be a number on a lease, but to me, it's a lifetime of quiet rhythms. I know the exact way the light hits the kitchen floor at 7 in the morning. It's a pale, buttery yellow that makes the linoleum look almost like gold. I know that if I leave the window in the bedroom cracked just an inch, the wind makes it sound like a low flute through the screen. These are the things that ground me in a world that is constantly rushing, constantly shouting, and constantly demanding our attention. My home was the one place where I could simply be. But there is a fragile nature to peace. It's like a thin sheet of glass. You don't notice. It's there when it's clear and clean. But the moment it cracks, you can't see anything else. And lately, my glass hasn't just been cracked. It's been shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. I firmly believe in giving someone a taste of their own medicine when they're being a dick. I know. That's a strong word for a woman. Like me too, use. My grandmother would have gasped at it. But sometimes, there is no other word in the English language that quite captures the essence of a person who moves through the world as if they are the only soul that matters. We all know the stories of loud, rude neighbors. If you've ever lived in an apartment building, you've experienced the shared life. It's a silent contract we all sign when we move in. I won't play my TV too loud at midnight, and you won't practice the drums at 6 in the morning. We agree to shrink ourselves just a little bit so that we can all fit together in this big brick box. It's a beautiful thing. Really a community of strangers showing each other the ultimate respect by being quiet. But then, they're the ones who never read the contract. Or worse, the ones who read it and decided it didn't apply to them. He moved in 6 months ago. Unit 3B, directly above my head. I remember the day he arrived. I was sitting on my balcony, enjoying a bit of knitting and the sound of the birds in the park across the street. Suddenly, the silence was ripped apart by a sound so loud it felt like it was tearing the air itself. It was a silver carload to the ground, sleek and incredibly aggressive. It didn't just drive into the parking lot, it invaded it. The man who stepped out was exactly what you'd expect. Let's call him. The Alpha used the kind of man who didn't just walk, he marched. He carried himself with a sort of heavy-footed arrogance, as if the ground should be honored to have his boots touching it. He didn't look at the flowers in the lobby. He didn't nod to the elderly couple in 1A. He just moved through the building like a storm front, leaving a trail of heavy cologne and irritation in his wake. At first, I told myself to be patient. Moving is stressful. Perhaps he's just overwhelmed by the change. But as the days turned into weeks, the pattern became clear. This wasn't moving stress. This was a lifestyle. Every single morning at exactly 6 o'clock, the ritual begins. He goes downstairs to that silver car. He turns the engine on, and then he waits. He doesn't drive away. He lets it idle. Now, I'm no mechanic, but I know that a modern car doesn't need 15 minutes of roaring to be ready for the road. No, he does it so we can hear it. He wants the whole neighborhood to know that he owns a machine that can make noise. Vroom, vroom, vroom. It's a deep, mechanical growl that travels up through the foundation of the building, through the floorboards of my bedroom, and right into my pillow. I'd be lying there, trying to catch those last few precious moments of sleep, and my entire bed would be shaking. It's a physical assault on your nervous system. Your heart starts to race, your jaw, and it's your resting. You're bracing yourself. And then he comes back upstairs to finish the job. If the morning car ritual was the opening act, the evening was the main event. He has a sound system that belongs in a stadium, not a one-bedroom apartment, and he loves bass. He doesn't play music with melodies or lyrics that you can follow. He plays music that is designed to vibrate, thump, thump, thump. It starts at 7. It's subtle at first, like a distant heartbeat, but by 9, it's a full-on siege. I'll be sitting in my armchair, the one with the soft green velvet that I've had since my husband passed hand. I can feel the vibrations traveling up through the soles of my feet. It's a strange thing, feeling a sound rather than hearing. It's invasive. It feels like someone is tapping on your skull from the inside. I've spent countless nights staring at my ceiling, watching the light fixture sway ever so slightly. I've tried to drown it out. I've turned my own TV up, but that just adds to the noise. I've put on headphones, but you can't block out a vibration. You can only endure it. I will literally never understand why someone could be so inconsiderate. I've spent hours thinking about it. Does he not know? Does he think the floors are made of lead? Or does he simply not care? I think, in his mind, he's the only person who is truly alive. Everyone else is just background noise in the movie. Of his life, he thinks that because he pays his rent, he has the right to consume as much space and sound as he wants. He doesn't realize that rent only buys you the inside of your apartment. It doesn't buy you the right to colonize mine. I tried to be the good person. I really did. I've always been a person who believes in the power of a kind word. One afternoon, I saw him in the hallway. He was wearing a gym shirt that was 3 sizes too small, looking very proud of his muscles. I stepped out and gave him a gentle wave. I said, "Excuse me, I'm your neighbor from directly below you. I was wondering if you could do me a tiny favor. The bass from your music, it's quite strong in my living room. Would you mind turning the subwoofer down a little bit in the evenings?" He didn't even slow down. He just looked at me over his shoulder with a smirk that made my blood run cold. "It's a free country, Auntie," he said. "Maybe get some better insulation if you're that sensitive." I'm just living my life. I'm just living my life. That sentence stayed with me. It's the battle cry of the selfish. It implies that his living is more important than my existing. It implies that my peace is a fair price for his entertainment. I went to the building manager. I told him about the car, the music, the vibrations. I told him that I couldn't sleep, that I couldn't read, that I was starting to feel like a stranger in my own home. The manager just shrugged. He told me the man pays on time and isn't technically breaking the city laws until after 11 at night. He said he'd send a letter, but not to expect much. The letter was sent. And you know what happened? The next night, the music was louder. It wasn't just noise anymore. It was a message. It was him saying, "You tried to stop me, and you failed. Now you'll pay for it." That leads me to tonight, to Tuesday. It's been raining for 3 days straight. The air is heavy and damp. My head aches from the constant rhythmic pounding from above. I tried to go to bed at 10, but the vibrations were so intense I felt like I was sleeping on a drum. I came back out to the living room and sat in the dark. I didn't turn on the light. I didn't pick up my book. I just sat there, thump, 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 thump. I looked up at the ceiling. There's a small crack in the plaster right near the light fixture. I've lived here 12 years, and that crack has never changed. But tonight, I noticed it was a little longer, a little wider. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap out, wasn't a scream or a burst of tears. It was a cold, quiet realization. I have spent my whole life being the quiet one. I've spent my life avoiding conflict, making excuses for people, and shrinking myself so that others could feel big. I've spent months trying to be quiet despite him being loud and rude. I've spent months being the victim of his alpha male energy, and I have absolutely had it. I decided in the darkness of my living room that I was done being a victim. If he wants to be loud, I will be loud back. If he wants to occupy my space, I will occupy his. But I won't do it with a subwoofer. I won't do it with a loud car. I realize that his toughness is his identity. He prides himself on being masculine, on being gritty, on being the kind of man who likes fast cars and heavy beats. He views me as a weak, old woman. He thinks I'm someone who belongs in a knitting circle or a garden. He has no idea how powerful a weak person can be when they stop caring about being polite. I started to think, what is the one thing this man would hate more than anything? What is the opposite of a silver sports car and a heavy back? What would make an alpha male feel like he was losing his mind? The answer came to me with a smile. It was pink, it was sugary, it was catchy. It was the world of glitter and girlhood. He wants us to suffer putting up with his crap. Fine. He can put up with suffering from mine. I looked at my speakers, good clear speakers that I usually use for classical music. I realized they could do so much more. I looked at my collection of candles and room sprays. I realized I had a whole arsenal of scents that he would find absolutely intolerable. I spent the next hour planning. I didn't feel tired anymore. I felt energized. I felt like a general preparing for a very unusual war. Tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, when he goes down to start that car, he's going to hear something new. Tomorrow evening, when he turns on that bass, The air in this building is going to change. I'm going to blast Taylor Swift. I'm going to aim those speakers directly at the ceiling. I'm going to play the songs that make you want to dance and cry and wear glitter. I'm going to play them until the lyrics are burned into his brain. And the smell is going to be the best part. I have a bottle of strawberry pound cake room spray. It is the sweetest, most artificial, most girly scent in existence. It smells like a dollhouse made of sugar. I'm going to make the hallway, the vents, and the very air he breathes smells like a strawberry bakery. If he wants us to feel his presence, he's going to feel mine. He's going to walk through the halls smelling like a cupcake. He's going to go to sleep with the voice of a pop star ringing in his ears. I firmly believe in giving someone a taste of their own medicine. And I guarantee you, he ain't gonna like the taste of this. I'm not a dick. I'm just a woman who wants her peace back. And if I have to turn this entire apartment building into a pink, strawberry-scented pop concert to get it, then that's exactly what I'm going to do. The era of quiet may ended tonight. Tomorrow, a new neighbor is moving in. She's loud, she's sweet, and she's got a very long playlist. Get ready, neighbor. Your world's about to get a lot more colorful. I spent the rest of that night sitting by the window, watching the rain wash the city streets. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is a heavy thing to carry, and I'd been carrying it for far too long. Instead, I felt light. I felt like I was finally taking the steering wheel of my own life again. I thought about the first song I'd play, something with a lot of high notes, something that would cut through that thick, muddy bass like a diamond through glass. I thought about the way the strawberry scent would drift through the vents, wrapping around his heavy furniture and his gym equipment. It was a delicious thought. It's funny how we let people push us around because we think it's the right thing to do. We think that being a good neighbor means being a doormat, but a doormat just gets stepped on until it's worn out and thrown away. I'm not a doormat. I'm a person. I have a right to read my book in silence. I have a right to sleep without my bed shaking. And if he won't give me that right, then I will make it impossible for him to enjoy his noise. I looked at the clock. 4 a.m. Usually, this is the time I'd be tossing and turning, dreading the sound of his car engine. But tonight, I just smiled. I went to the kitchen and made myself a fresh cup of tea. I added a little extra honey. I wanted to start my morning with something sweet because I knew the rest of the day was going to be even sweeter. I could almost hear the silver car idling in my mind. But this time, the sound didn't make me tense up. It just reminded me that the countdown had begun. In 2 hours, the music starts. In 2 hours, the strawberries arrive. And in 2 hours, the alpha upstairs is going to realize that he's no longer the only one who matters in this building. He's about to get a very long, very pink lesson in common courtesy. And I'll be right here, sipping my tea and singing along to every word. The clock on my nightstand ticked toward 5:55. For the past 6 months, this specific 5-minute window was usually filled with a growing pit of anxiety in my stomach. I would lie there, staring at the dark ceiling, my muscles tensed, waiting for the inevitable mechanical roar that would signal the end of my peace. But this morning was different. I wasn't bracing for a blow. I was preparing for a performance. I stood in my kitchen, the tiles cold under my bare feet. On the counter sat my artillery. There was the Bluetooth speaker, fully charged and glowing with a tiny blue light. There was the pink bottle of strawberry pound cake room spray, looking innocent enough but packed with the power of 1,000 artificial bakeries. And there was my phone, with the great reclaiming playlist queued up and ready to go. I took a slow sip of my tea. My heart was thumping, but not with fear. It was the thrill of the underdog. I looked up at the ceiling and thought, he has no idea. He thinks today is just another Tuesday where he gets to be the king of the parking lot. He thinks I'm still the quiet woman in 2B who grumbles into her pillow and does nothing. At exactly 6:01, I heard it, the heavy, rhythmic thud of his boots on the floor above. He was heading out. I moved to the bedroom and stood by the window that overlooks his designated parking spot. I watched as the silver sports car sat there, looking sleek and arrogant in the gray morning light. A moment later, the door to the building opened, and he stepped out. He was wearing a leather jacket and sunglasses, even though the sun wasn't even fully up yet. He looked like he was posing for a movie poster that nobody asked for. He got into the car. The engine didn't just start. It exploded into life. Vroom. The familiar vibration hit my windows, rattling the glass in its frame. He sat there, hands on the wheel, letting the engine roar and the exhaust fill the cool morning air. This was the alpha tax he charged the neighborhood every single morning. "Okay, Taylor," I whispered to the empty room. "Show him how it's done." I hit play. I had placed a speaker right against the glass of the open window, angled downward. Suddenly, the high-pitched, shimmering intro to Shake It Off blasted out into the quiet courtyard. It was loud, it was bright, it was the complete sonic opposite of his deep, grumbling engine. The trumpet sounds and the infectious beat cut through the low-frequency roar of the car like a hot knife through butter. I watched him through the silver car's windshield. I saw his head snap up. He looked toward my window. I didn't hide behind the curtain. I stood there, wrapped in my floral bathrobe, holding my mug of tea. I didn't scowl. I didn't point. I just looked at him and gave a small, polite nod, as if we were both just enjoying a lovely musical morning. He didn't move for 30 seconds. He sat there, submerged in the sound of a pop star singing about cruising and can't stop, won't stop, move in. For the first time, he wasn't the loudest thing in the parking lot. His tough engine sounded muddy and dull beneath the crisp high notes of the pop song. He looked confused. He looked unsettled. He didn't let the car idle for minutes today. Within 3 minutes of the music starting, he slammed the car into gear and sped out of the lot, his tires screeching just a little bit. Phase 1 was a success, but the morning was just beginning. I walked back into the living room and picked up the strawberry spray. Our building has an old ventilation system. It's a bit of a nuisance. Usually you can smell when the neighbor in for Celsius has burnt his toast or when someone is cooking cabbage. But today, it was my greatest ally. I went to the main vent in my living room and gave it 3 long, heavy sprays. The scent was immediate. It was thick, sugary, and smelled exactly like a box of artificial donuts. I moved to the hallway door and sprayed the gap. I wanted the hallway to be a minefield of sweetness. I wanted him to walk back into this building later and feel like he had accidentally stepped into a dollhouse. I spent the next hour moving through my apartment, keeping the music playing at a moderate level, just enough to be felt through the floorboards, but not enough to get the police called. I was setting a new baseline. I was telling the wolves and the man above them that the silence he had stolen was being replaced by something he couldn't control. Around 7:30, I heard the building's front door open. He was back. Usually he'd go to the gym after his morning drive, but maybe the music had thrown off his rhythm. I heard his heavy footsteps in the hallway. I stood near my door, listening. He stopped. I could tell he stopped because the footsteps vanished right outside my unit. I could imagine him standing there, his nose wrinkling as the wall of strawberry pound cake hit him. It's an aggressive scent. It doesn't ask for permission. It just occupies your lungs. I heard a muffled what the ... from the other side of the wood. Then the footsteps continued, but they were slower. Lesser, and he went up the stairs to the 3rd floor. I went to my speaker and turned up blank space. So it's gonna be forever, or it's gonna go down in flames, ... I heard his door open and slam shut above me. A few seconds later, there was a heavy thud on his floor. He had dropped his gym bag. Then, silence. For the next 2 hours, there was no bass, no thumping, no stomping. It was as if he was sitting up there, trying to process the fact that the quiet lady downstairs had suddenly turned his world into a sugary pop concert. But I knew this wasn't the end. A man like that doesn't just give up. He's used to winning. He's used to being the one who dictates the energy of a room. He was probably up there right now, getting angry. He was probably thinking of a way to show me. I didn't care. I felt a peace I hadn't felt in months. I sat down and did my crossword puzzle. Every now and then, I'd give the air a fresh spritz of strawberry. I realized that the secret to this kind of battle isn't volume, it's consistency. It's about being so relentlessly, cheerfully annoying that the other person realizes the only way to get their own peace back is to give you yours. Okay, I thought about his car again. I thought about the way he looked when the music hit him. He looked swamp. Without the shield of his noise, he was just a man in a silver car, listening to a song he didn't choose. I firmly believe that everyone has a breaking point. For me, it was a crack in the plaster. For him, I suspected it was going to be the chorus of a Taylor Swift song and the smell of a dessert he never got to eat. As the afternoon sun began to dip, I prepared for the evening session. The night was when he usually did his worst. The night was when the bass would rattle my bones. But tonight, I was ready. I had a whole list of girly anthems ready to go. I had enough strawberry spray to scent a football stadium. I'm not a dick. I'm just a woman who realized that if you can't have silence, you might as well have a party. And everyone knows that the best parties are the ones the neighbors hate. I looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "Your move, Alpha." The afternoon sun began to bleed into a bruised purple twilight. Usually, this was the hour I would feel my chest tighten. I would start to look at the clock, counting down the minutes until 7 p.m., the hour the siege typically began. Would sit in my green velvet chair, trying to enjoy the last slivers of quiet, knowing they were about to be stolen. But today, the anxiety was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. I felt like a sentry guarding a border. I knew he was home. I had heard the silver car roar back into the lot an hour ago quietly this time, interestingly enough. No long idling, just a quick engine kill and the slam of a door. I heard him move through the hallway, and I heard him climb the stairs with a pace that felt irritated. I didn't spray the hallway this time. I wanted him to get comfortable. I wanted him to think the morning was a fluke. A one-time outburst from a frustrated old woman who had finally lost her marbles. I sat in the dark, my living room smelling like a strawberry field in mid-July. I didn't turn on a single lamp. I just watched the red light on my speaker, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Then it happened. At 7:15, the first thud came. It wasn't the usual music. It was a single, heavy stomp right above my head. Then another. He was pacing. He was testing the waters. A few minutes later, the air began to hum. I felt it in my shins. First, the low-frequency growl of his subwoofer warming up. It started as a low drone, like a distant plane, and then thump, 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 dot. He had chosen something aggressive. It sounded like industrial machinery grinding against metal, underscored by a bass line that was designed to do nothing but rattle teeth. It was louder than usual. This was his attack. This was him saying, "You think your little pop songs can stop me? This is my world. This is my noise." I didn't rush to the speaker. I let him have his moment. I let the floorboards vibrate for 5 minutes. I wanted him to feel powerful. I wanted him to think he had reclaimed his throne. Then I stood up. I walked over to the speaker I had suctioned to the ceiling earlier. I reached up and turned it on. I didn't go for Taylor Swift this time. I went for something even higher, even more piercing. I chose Call Me Maybe by Carly Rae Jepsen. It's a song made of pure sugar and high-frequency violins. I turned the dial dot. The contrast was jarring. It was a War of the Worlds. From above, the dark, heavy, masculine thud of the bass. From below, the bright, sparkling, feminine chirping of the pop song. The two sounds didn't mix. They collided in the air, creating a chaotic, dizzying atmosphere. I didn't stop there. I grabbed the strawberry pound cake spray. I went to the vents. I didn't just give him a spritz. I gave him a full-on drenching. I emptied half the bottle. I wanted the scent to be so thick it was almost visible. I wanted it to travel up those pipes and into his living room like a sweet, pink fog. The bass stopped. It didn't fade out. It just cut off, as if he had pulled the plug in a fit of rage. I kept my music playing. I started to hum along. I went to the kitchen and started humming while I washed my teacup. I threw a wish in the well. Don't ask me, I'll never tell. 30 seconds later, there was a pounding at my door. Not a polite knock, a heavy, booming fist against the wood. I took a deep breath. I didn't rush. I dried my hands on my apron, smoothed down my hair, and walked to the door. I didn't open it all the way. I kept the chain on and opened it just a few inches. There he was. He wasn't wearing his sunglasses. Now, his face was flushed, and he looked genuinely bewildered. He smelled like a gym, but the air around him was already beginning to smell like a strawberry cupcake. "What is your problem?" he hissed. He didn't yell, but his voice was trembling with anger. "What is that? That noise? And what is that smell?" It's coming through the vents. My whole place smells like a freaking candy store. I looked at him with the widest, most innocent eyes I could muster. I tilted my head slightly. Oh, hello, neighbor. I'm so sorry. Is the music too loud? I thought we were having a communal music night. I've been enjoying your bass for months, so I thought I'd share some of my favorite upbeat tracks with you. It's a free country, right? That's what he told me. He gritted his teeth. You're doing this on purpose. You're playing that girl music just to get at me. Girl music? I asked, laughing softly. It's just pop music, dear. It's very popular. And the scent. I just love strawberries. I thought it might brighten up the building. It's much nicer than exhaust fumes, don't you think? He stepped closer, trying to look intimidate. Turn it off now and stop spraying that crap into the vents. I can't breathe up there. I didn't flinch. I let the smile stay on my face, but I let it get a little cooler. I tell you what, I'll make a deal with it. I will turn off my girl music and I will stop my strawberry spray the very second you turn off your bass and stop idling your car for 15 minutes every morning. If you want a library, move into one. But as long as you're making this building a concert hall for your noise, I'm going to make it a bakery for mine. He stared at me. He was used to people backing down. He was used to being the alpha. He wasn't used to a grandmother in a floral apron telling him exactly how it was going to be. You're crazy, he muttered. Maybe, I said, gently closing the door. But I'm a crazy person who finally has a good sound system. Good night, neighbor. I slid the deadbolt home. I didn't turn off the music. I let the song finish. Then I put on Part of Me by Katy Perry. I sat back down in my chair. The bass didn't come back. 10 minutes passed, 20 an hour. The silence from above was absolute. I realized then that he was defeated. Not because I was louder, but because I had made his life inconvenient. He could ignore my complaints. He could ignore the building manager's letters, but he couldn't ignore the fact that every time he tried to be tough, the world around him became girly. He couldn't feel like a big, powerful man while listening to a bubblegum pop chorus and smelling like a strawberry tart dot. I had taken away his alpha environment. I had colonized his space with things he couldn't fight with a fist or a roar. I firmly believe that you have to meet people where they are. He was being a dick, so I gave him a taste of what that feels like only. My medicine was pink and smelled like sugar. I stayed up late that night, not because of the noise, but because I was enjoying the quiet for the first time in 6 months. The walls felt solid again. The air felt like it belonged to me. I looked at the crack in the ceiling and I smiled. It didn't look so big anymore. I knew the battle wasn't over. He'd try something else tomorrow or the day after, but the rules had changed. He knew now that I wasn't a victim, I was an opponent, and I had a much better playlist than he did. Closed my eyes and breathed in. The scent of strawberry was fading, leaving behind just a hint of sweetness. It was the smell of a small victory dot. Sleep well, neighbor. I've got plenty of Taylor Swift left for tomorrow. The following morning was the quietest I had experienced since the day I moved in. At 6 o'clock, I sat in the dark with my tea, waiting. I heard him leave his apartment. I heard him descend the stairs. I waited for the roar of the silver car. It came, but it was different. He turned the key. The engine growled for maybe 30 seconds, and then he pulled out of the driveway and disappeared into the morning fog. No idling, no shaking windows, just the sound of a man who realized that the price of his morning roar was a high-frequency pop concert. But I knew a man like that doesn't just retreat. He regrouped. He couldn't beat me with noise, so he was going to try to beat me with authority. Around 11 in the morning, there was a knock at my door. It wasn't the heavy, aggressive pounding of the alpha from 3B. It was a hesitant, wary series of raps. I knew exactly who it was. I smoothed my apron, checked that my Great Reclaiming playlist was paused, and opened the door. There stood Mr. Henderson, the building manager. He looked like he hadn't slept well, and his eyes were watering. He took one step toward my door and then stopped, blinking rapidly. "Good morning, May," he said, his voice sounding a bit nasal. "Good heavens, what is that? ... smell? It's like a strawberry patch exploded in the hallway." I gave him my warmest, most grandmotherly smile. "Oh, hello, Mr. Henderson. Is it the scent?" I'm so sorry. I've been doing a bit of deep cleaning and I might have been a little heavy-handed with my favorite room spray. It's strawberry pound cake. Doesn't it just make the place feel cheerful? Mr. Henderson sniffed the air and rubbed his nose. It's certainly something. I'm here because I received a very pointed complaint from the tenant in 3B. He claims you are harassing him with, and I'm quoting here, ear-piercing girl music and chemical scent attacks through the vents. I let my jaw drop just a fraction. I put my hand on my chest and looked at him with genuine-looking hurt. Harassing him. Mr. Henderson, I'm a 60-year-old woman who likes to knit and read. How could I possibly harass a young, strong man like him? I stepped back and gestured for him to enter. Please come in, see for yourself. Mr. Henderson stepped into my living room. I had prepared for this. My speakers were tucked neatly on the bookshelf, looking perfectly ordinary. My knitting basket was out. A plate of lemon bars sat on the coffee table. The apartment was spotless, sunny, and smelled overwhelmingly of artificial strawberries. He says, you're aiming speakers at the ceiling and playing pop music at all hours, Henderson said, though he seemed less convinced the more he looked around my cozy home. Well, I said, sitting down and inviting him to do the same. I do play music. I've always played music. But as you told me just last week, Mr. Henderson, it's a free country. I've had to listen to his heavy bass vibrating my teacups for months. I simply decided that if I had to listen to his music, I might as well play some of my own to balance it out. Is there a rule against Taylor Swift? I find her very empowering. Mr. Henderson looked at the lemon bars and then at me. He sighed, the sound of a man caught between a rock and a hard strawberry-scented place. He says, is targeted? He says you only turn it on when he turns his ono? I said with a light laugh. Perhaps our musical tastes just happen to coincide. Or maybe his loud bass reminds me that I haven't heard my own music in a while. Surely, if his noise isn't breaking the city ordinance, then my little pop songs aren't either. We're all just living our lives, as he so eloquently put it to me in the hallway. Mr. Henderson winced. He remembered the conversation we had previously when he told me his hands were tied. He knew exactly what was happening. He wasn't a fool. He was just a man who wanted a quiet life. He looked up at the ceiling, then back at me. May, he said softly. He's threatening to withhold rent if I don't stop the scent attacks. He says he can't breathe in his own living room. I leaned forward, my expression turning serious but still gentle. Mr. Henderson, I've lived here for 12 years. I pay my rent on the first of the month, every month. I don't idle a loud car at 6 a.m. I don't shake the building with at midnight. If he is so sensitive to the smell of strawberries, perhaps he should consider how sensitive I am to the smell of his exhaust fumes and the vibration of his floors. I picked up a lemon bar and offered it to him. It's a shared building. Mr. Henderson, if he wants to live in a world where he's the only one who makes noise and controls the air, he needs to buy a house in the country. But as long as he is my neighbor, I will be his. And I have as much right to my strawberries as he has to his chrome. Mr. Henderson took the lemon bar. He took a bite, chewed slowly, and nodded. These are excellent. May? Thank you, dear. He stood up, brushing crumbs from his shirt. I'll tell him that I've inspected the premises and found no violation of the lease. I'll tell him that room fragrance is not a prohibited substance and that playing music during daylight hours is perfectly legal. But may ... try not to start a fire. All right? I stood up and walked him to the door. I wouldn't dream of it, Mr. Henderson. I just want a peaceful home. And I think we're finally getting there. As I closed the door, I felt a surge of triumph. The alpha had tried to use the system against me. And the system had looked at my lemon bars and my lace doilies and decided I was the innocent one. He had spent months using the rules as a shield for his rudeness, and now those same rules were being used to protect my retaliation. I walked over to the vent and gave it one more celebratory spray of strawberry pound cake. I sat down in my green chair and picked up my knitting. The building was silent. No bass, no stomping. I knew he was up there, probably fuming, probably realizing that for the first time in his life, being loud and aggressive hadn't worked. He had encountered a force he didn't know how to fight, a woman who was willing to be just as inconsiderate as he was. But with a smile and a scent of sugar, I firmly believe that some people only learn when the world becomes a mirror. He looked into the mirror today, and all he saw was a pink, pop-singing reflection of his own behavior. And he hated it. I spent the afternoon in total peace. I didn't even turn on the music. I didn't need to. The threat of the music was now more powerful than the music itself. He knew that the moment he pushed, I would push back with twice the sweetness. Dada's evening approached. I heard him come home. He walked softly. He didn't slam his door. He didn't turn on his sound system. I sat in my chair, knitting a little scarf for my granddaughter, and I listened to the beautiful sound of absolutely nothing. I'm on Team A, and I've learned that sometimes to get the silence you deserve, you have to make a little bit of noise. And if that noise happens to be catchy and smell like fruit, well, that's just a bonus. The days that followed were a masterclass in the power of a quiet revolution. It's a funny thing about human nature, we often think that the loudest voice wins the argument, or the strongest hand holds the most power. But over that week, I watched the Alpha and 3B slowly shrink. Not in size, but in his presence. He had discovered that his aggression relied entirely on me being a passive victim. When I stopped playing the part of the quiet, suffering old woman, he lost the stage he was performing on. I kept my promise to myself. I didn't become a bully. I didn't keep the music blasting just for the sake of being mean. I only kept it ready. It was like a lighthouse eye. Didn't need to keep the beacon spinning at full power once the ship had steered away from the rocks, but I kept the oil in the lamp, just in case. Every morning at 6, I would sit by my kitchen window with my tea. I would hear his door open. I would hear him walk down the stairs. And every morning, I would see that silver car. He'd get in, turn the key, and pull out of the lot immediately. No more 10-minute idling sessions. No more vibrating windows. It was as if he was afraid that if he lingered too long, the opening notes of a pop anthem would descend from the sky like a colorful net. The building itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The air in the hallways finally lost that heavy, thick scent of strawberry pound cake. I had dialed it back to a gentle, manageable fragrance. But the memory of it remained. It was a lingering ghost that reminded everyone on the third floor that the woman in 2B was not to be trifled with. About 2 weeks after the manager's visit, I had my first real interaction with him since the war began. I was coming back from the local market with 2 heavy bags of groceries. As I reached the front door of the building, he was coming out. He was dressed in his usual gym gear, but his shoulders weren't pushed back as far as they used to be. He looked tired. He saw me, and for a second, he froze. He looked at my grocery bags, and then he looked at me. Usually, he would have just pushed past, letting the door slam in my face, but this time, he stopped. He reached out, grabbed the heavy metal handle of the door, and held it open. "Thank you," I said, giving him a genuine, warm smile. I didn't make it smug. I didn't make it a gotcha moment. I just treated him like a human being. He cleared his throat. "Yeah, no problem." He hesitated for a second, his eyes darting to my apartment door down the hall. The music. "It's been quiet lately," I nodded. "It has been, hasn't it? It's amazing how much more we can enjoy our own homes when the air is still. I've been catching up on so much reading." He looked down at his shoes and didn't realize the bass traveled that much. I thought the floors were thicker. It was the closest thing to an apology I was ever going to get. It wasn't a full "I'm sorry," but it was an admission of awareness. He had finally realized that he wasn't living in a vacuum. He had realized that every thump of his music was a ripple that hit someone else's life. "They are thin," I said gently, "but as long as we're both careful, I think we'll both be much happier. I'd much rather listen to the birds in the park than Taylor Swift all day. Wouldn't you?" He gave a short, dry laugh. "Yeah, definitely the birds." He walked toward his car, and I went inside. I felt a profound sense of closure. I hadn't just won a noise complaint. I had helped a young man understand the basic mechanics of living in a society. I had taught him that respect isn't something you demand. It's something you trade. Music, a slow, gentle, and soaring piano piece. It feels like the end of a long journey. As I sat in my green velvet chair that evening, the apartment was filled with a beautiful, golden silence. The sun was setting, casting long, peaceful shadows across my books and my plants. I didn't feel the need to reach for my speaker. I didn't feel the need to grab the room spray. I firmly believe that we all have a choice in how we handle the dicks of the world. We're gonna let them turn us into bitter, angry people who shout at the ceiling. Or we can find a way to maintain our dignity while teaching them a lesson they won't forget. My lesson was pink, sugary, and high-pitched, but it was effective. At that crack in the ceiling sometimes. It's still there. It's a permanent reminder of the months I spent in frustration. But it doesn't bother me anymore. It's just a scar from a battle that's been won. I've learned that peace isn't just the absence of noise. It's the presence of respect. It's the feeling of knowing that you have stood up for yourself without losing who you are. I'm still the woman who knits scarves and drinks tea. I'm still the neighbor who says hello in the hallway. But I'm also the woman who knows how to use a pop song as a shield. If you're out there and you're struggling with someone who doesn't respect your boundaries, I want you to know that you have more power than you think. You don't have to be a bully to stop a bully. You just have to be creative. You have to find their base and meet it with your strawberry. Life is too short to spend it vibrating with someone else's anger. Find your music. Find your scent. Reclaim your space. I'm Auntie May. And tonight, for the first time in a very long time, I'm going to sleep in a house that is perfectly, wonderfully, sweetly quiet. Good night, my friends. And may your homes always be your sanctuary.